Well, it is Mother's Day, and it's one of the highest honors, honestly, I think any that a woman can wear is that of a mother. And regardless of whether you think your mom is the best mom in the world or the worst mom in the world, and I know people come from all over on that, we still owe them our life, right? And we have moms in this group, married, single, or surrogate, and each one carries a unique and very precious responsibility. You know, dads are great. I love being a dad. Don't get me wrong; it's the coolest thing ever. But the strength and the fortitude, the compassion, the patience, the energy it takes to be a mom is frankly, it's amazing. And yeah, for some people, motherhood is none of these things. You know, for some people, the prospect of even being a mother is terrifying, or inconvenience, or unwanted. And for many of the women who feel that way, they turn to abortion as a solution, choosing to end their pregnancy. Now, this topic today, as we talk about abortion, the sanctity of life, and I've said that we were going to be talking about this at some point. I'm not talking about this because this was in the news. I'm talking about this because I planned it 4 months ago, that this is what we'd be talking about. And yet here we are. And it just seems incredibly relevant in light of the topic that has been in the news this week. So it was 1973 in the landmark Supreme Court case, Roe versus Wade. It opened the doors for the nationwide legalization of abortion. That's what's really in the news. And it was the right of a woman to end the life of her unborn child. It was a 7-2 vote. The court decided that, quote, the right to an abortion as a fundamental right included within the guarantee of personal privacy, and that the 14th Amendment's concept of personal liberty, as given by the Due Process Clause, this is what they said, is broad enough to encompass a woman's decision whether or not to terminate her pregnancy. This was from the Supreme Court opinion that was given in 1973. Since 1973, there have been over 60 million abortions in the United States. And on average, over 1 million abortions occur every year in America and 40 million worldwide. So to say that this is a hot topic issue would be somewhat of an understatement, right? And you know, pro-life and pro-choice activists are the center of protests, lawsuits, politics, judicial appointments, and even acts of violence. And in almost 50 years since Roe v. Wade, multiple attempts have been made to overturn the law, both the state and the local levels. Many judicial nominees are surreptitiously submitted to this litmus test on their views of the case. It's the one case that gets asked about in every Supreme Court nominee conversation. And they're often selected or blocked based on their view of this law. And all of this is boiling over this week as the leaked Supreme Court draft opinion hinted at overturning Roe v. Wade and returning the issue of the legality of abortion to the states. Real quick, I just want to mention this. If Roe v. Wade gets overturned, if this is the final decision of the court, it does not make abortion illegal. It just simply takes what has been federally allowed and pushes that back to the states. We live in California. It will remain legal in the state of California. Governor Newsom has declared that he wants California to be a sanctuary state for abortion, even up to paying to pay for people to travel from other states to receive an abortion. Now, there's a lot on the news. I just want to make sure that people understand. We talk about praying for Roe v. Wade to be overturned. It doesn't stop abortion. It just simply means that every state can make their own decision about it. Okay, so let's understand that. Now, the reason this is such a sensitive subject is because it plays on so many of our sensibilities, right? A newborn's right to live, a woman's right to choose what's best for her body, what's best for her life, and whether or not a baby in the womb is actually a person or not. So, according to the Pew Research poll conducted in 2021, okay, this is just last year, before all this happens, they found that the majority of adults, 59% of adults, say they believe abortion should be legal in all or most cases, okay? 39% say it should be illegal in all or most cases, a pretty relatively split, like 2% undecided. People typically tend to come down on one side of the issue or another, the pro-life and the pro-choice camps, and that's typically the way it's framed. Either you're pro the life of the child, right, or you're pro the choice of a woman to decide. And so pro-lifers accuse the others of not caring about human life, while pro-choicers typically accuse their opponents of being medieval on women's rights. All right? Some try to straddle the issue and they say something like this: well, I personally am pro-life, but I'd never tell a woman that she shouldn't have an abortion. The truth is, if you say that, you are pro-choice. So just understand that. So the position of the Bible, the position of my heart, the position of this church is that we are pro-life. And if we're going to be consistent in our beliefs and the value of humanity who is made in the image of God, and if we believe that people truly matter, which the Bible teaches us to believe, then the sanctity of life and all life matters. So I'm going to do my best real quick just to talk today about why life matters, why this issue is important. I'm going to really try hard to not resort to emotional tricks. I'm not going to describe what happens during an abortion. I'm not going to try to regale you with too many statistics. I do want to have an honest discussion about this topic and try to address as many sides of the issue as we can and just give you some perspective. And the whole discussion of what our stand on abortion should be hinges on this question: is the unborn child a person? Is the unborn a person? And when do they become a person? Because if they're a person, then they're made in the image of God. And if they're made in the image of God, then they should be protected as anyone else would or should be. Genesis 9:6 says, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. All right? And the Bible actually teaches that the unborn are people, and as such should be afforded every right to a child outside the womb. We realize that unborn children unborn babies are called children. And look, in Luke 1:41, it says, Elizabeth heard the greeting of Mary, and the baby leaped in her womb. Okay, if a sign of being alive is responding to stimulation, this child was responding to the presence of God and to the voice that he heard. Unborn babies receive the same protections as an adult. Okay, in Exodus, the law says this: now suppose two men are fighting, and in the process they accidentally strike a pregnant woman so that she gives birth prematurely. Well, if no further injury results, the man who struck the woman must pay the amount of compensation the woman's husband demands and the judges approve. And then he says in verse 23, but if there is further injury, the punishment must match the injury. A life for a life, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. In other words, if the baby is harmed in this process, not just getting in an accident, the mom goes into labor, but if the child is harmed or dies, that is viewed as murder. And there's no indication that biblically the unborn are not human. Now, of course, people ask the question, when does life begin, right? Somebody this week said that religion hasn't figured that issue out. And that's not true. You know, the safest answer is conception, because at that moment, life is initiated and the growing process begins, right? The complete genetic code, 46 chromosomes, is present. The child begins to develop, and typically within 3 weeks of conception, the baby's heart is beating. Not long after that, brainwave activity is detected. Not long after that, the child has fingerprints. Not long after that, all the organs are there and functioning. Okay, cells are dividing, a living process, mitosis, right? The cells split and divide. These are the things that living biological creatures do. Life begins at conception. One scientist testified before Congress, and they said this: to accept the fact that after fertilization has taken place, a new human has come into being is no longer a matter of taste or opinion. The human nature of a human being from conception to old age is not a metaphysical contention. It is plain experimental evidence. You know, there's actually atheists who would argue, who are pro-life, because scientifically, this idea that life begins at conception holds up. It's fascinating. So the question is, if the unborn children are people and they are made in the image of God, well, what exactly are the arguments? What are the arguments in relationship to abortion? Well, look, here's the biblical view. Let me go real quick. The biblical view says this: and the Bible teaches that there are certain things that God hates. And he lists them in Proverbs chapter 6. And here it says, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, hearts that devise wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. You know, look, even from the world's standards, there aren't people who are much more innocent than unborn children. God condemns the detestable behavior of Judah. In Jeremiah 7, he says this, and they have built the high places, or the sons of Judah have done evil in my sight, declares the Lord. They have set their detestable things in the house that is called by my name to defile it, and they have built the high places of Topheth, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, which is a pagan altar, to burn their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I did not command, nor did it even come into my mind. How off does something have to be that it doesn't come into the mind of God like this is even a good idea, right? Even the killing of children, even for religious worship, is absolutely foreign to God. Now, there's obviously the biblical view. We could take the moral view, which says that, I mean, you can engage anybody in a discussion on morality, and they would likely tell you that murder is wrong, right? Most people would say, for the most part, that murder is wrong. And if they say it's not, you probably might want to question your friendship with them. And yet some people would not view abortion as murder, okay? Why not? Well, again, because they don't view the child as human, but almost an invader, an inconvenience. So in their mind, the ending of a human life, if the ending of human life is wrong, you'd have to reject moral absolutes when making a decision about ending an unborn child's life, okay? Their process in mind, for those who might view that murder is wrong, but say that killing an unborn is not wrong, their morality in this case would have one to ask not, is it good, but what? Is it good for me? And that's the question. But if we view the unborn as a human person, we have to apply the same morality to them as we would any other human being. We even have to consider, where does love your neighbor come into play in this instance? So that's the question. Now, somebody would say, well, if you love your neighbor, you let me do what I want. That's not always the case. I love my neighbor. I'm not going to let them light their house on fire. So obviously we've looked at the biblical view. There's the moral view, which says that we need to apply the same morality to unborn children as we do to any human. And then there's the woman's rights view. Well, let's talk about that, right? That's the big one. So the discussion on abortion, it's most often framed as what? A woman's right to choose. Again, taking the baby out of the discussion. It asks the question, does a woman have the right to make the decision regarding what she does to her own body? Well, this isn't a question of getting a tattoo or getting piercings, right? It's framed as a decision around a woman's well-being, about whether she is obligated to carry this child, to bear this child, and care for this child. And it's a valid question considering the work of pregnancy, childbirth, and a large part of child rearing falls on the mother, right? Look, having kids is tough. I acknowledge that. And even when you want the kid, and when my wife and when Chris and I discussed having kids, we asked each other if we were ready for it, right? But I had to know if she was really ready for it, all right? Because I was just kind of along for the ride, and she was responsible for a whole lot more than I was at the beginning. Those 9 months, I could just kind of stand there and be supportive. What do you want? I'll go get it for you. When our youngest, when she was pregnant with her youngest, pregnancy was weird. She couldn't handle being around raw meat, so I had to cut the meat and cook the meat. It was just I can't help you here. I'll just do what I can, and I tell you that because it was just there are things, and there was so much of it was on her. Having children, nursing children, I can't help with that, and it fell on her. And so, and I tell you that because, look, somebody might be thinking this question. What right do you, a man, have to say anything about a woman's rights? And that's a fair question, right? I wasn't involved. I didn't have to carry the child. I didn't have to do these things. But I will tell you, I am the man who fathered 2 more women and has taken responsibility to raise them to be godly women, who wants them to grow up in a world where they're treated equally and fairly. And I also want them to have a correct view of God's morality and an understanding that their life and their decisions often have consequences that can't be avoided or ignored. I also don't ignore the fact that men are responsible during the act of sex, right? Kids don't just happen, and bear a responsibility, that men need to bear a responsibility for their children. It's also fair to say that both men and women have a lot of choices that they could make long before they would ever have to make a choice over the life of an unborn child. I've seen, maybe you've seen this too. There's a version a lot lately. If you don't have a uterus, you don't or shouldn't have an opinion. Maybe you've heard that, some version. Ironically, the world has made this claim lately that men can get pregnant, right? Which means that I guess as a man, I'm allowed to now have an opinion. I don't know. I'm trying to keep up with the rules, but when people say this, there's 3 problems when you hear that statement. Let me try to encourage you. 1, it takes a man to get a woman pregnant. And if the child is born, he's liable for child support. And this argument also that assumes that, if you don't have a uterus, then you shouldn't have an opinion. This argument assumes that men have no responsibility or desire to raise a child and will avoid responsibility, and that's false. All right? I know stories of men whose girlfriend or wife or whoever it was got pregnant, and the men said, I've done this, I want to take responsibility, I will rear this child, and they fought to stop that woman from having an abortion because they wanted that child to live. And there was there was a guy in Oklahoma was like, if we just make men responsible for, if women can't get abortions and men need it, I'm going to send a bill through and men have to pay child support. And we're like, great, I have zero problem with that. Men, if you bear a child, take care of that child. Okay? So, understand that. The other problem with this statement is this. When your worldview can't decide who is a woman and who can get pregnant, how can you dictate who deserves an opinion on the matter, right? Pro-choice and pro-trans governor of California ironically backed himself into a corner this week when he tweeted the tired line, if men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be a conversation. We'll just pray he figures it out. And number 3, this is one always gets me, is simply this. Proponents of this view that men should not have an opinion forget it was the opinion of 7 men in 1973 that decided Roe v. Wade. So there's that. So back to this issue of rights. Where does a mother's right to choose whether the unborn child lives or not come from? Okay, well the statement is usually made, what? That this is my body, right? This is my body. And that's only half true. That's only half true because the child inside a woman is a distinct being with unique DNA. So distinct, in fact, that if you took the fertilized egg from a black couple and put it in a white surrogate, the child born would still be black. And the mother may make a decision about her body, but it directly affects the body of another human being. Okay? That's why the abortion argument hinges on dehumanizing the baby, which invalidates any rights that it may have had. A lot of people and politicians say, well, I'm against abortion, except in the instances of what? Of incest, rape, and endangering the mother's life, okay? There's also people who, fearing their child has a birth defect, have chosen to end the pregnancy. Some of our politicians like to uphold Denmark as this great example of, socialism, and we talk about some of these things, right? Oh, we need to have an economy like Denmark. Well, here, let me tell you about Denmark. Denmark instituted screening for Down syndrome for every pregnant woman. And it allows women who are past the country's 12-week abortion ban, which they have a 12-week abortion ban, to terminate their pregnancy if the child is diagnosed with Down syndrome. According to The Atlantic, which is not pro-life by any stretch of the imagination, according to The Atlantic, nearly all expecting mothers choose to take the test. Of those who get a Down syndrome diagnosis, more than 95% choose to abort their children. They're wiping out people in Denmark who have Down syndrome. That is referred to as eugenics, which is something that certain organizations were founded on, which is to eliminate certain distasteful or unfortunate traits in a population, and that's what this is doing. The loopholes and worst-case scenarios have played out for years in the abortion debate. Let's take a minute. Let's address the loopholes. Okay, give me some perspective on these. So, of course, we've all heard this one, incest and rape, right, which are awful. According to the Guttmacher Institute, which is a research and policy institute founded by Planned Parenthood, so you know where they stand. Cases of pregnancy as a result of incest or rape make up less than 1.5% of pregnancies. All right? To be clear, rape and incest are reprehensible crimes, horrible for the victims and their families. But listen, even if we eliminated abortions, except in these cases, we'd still eliminate almost 99% of all abortion. But even then, it's fair to ask, why punish the child for another person's crimes? Since when do 2 wrongs make a right? And I don't think allowing abortion on those grounds meets any moral standard. Oh, birth defects. What about birth defects, right? This is a real thing, right? Genetic testing has advanced to a stage where doctors can detect potential abnormalities in an unborn child early in a pregnancy. And as a result, some people are making decisions about their child's future based on these test results. They might ask the question, what kind of life will this child have? Will they actually have a future? And some parents might even view it as a mercy to terminate the pregnancy, both for the quality of life of the parent and the child, right? Randy Alcorn, author, tells a story of a medical school professor who proposed the following case study. The father had syphilis, the mother had tuberculosis. Of 4 previous children, the first was blind, the second died, the third was both deaf and dumb, and the fourth had tuberculosis. What would you advise the woman to do when she finds out she's pregnant again? One student answered, well, I would advise an abortion. To which the professor responded, congratulations, you have just killed Beethoven. Now, the debate forces us to ask two important questions. The first question is simply this: did God make a mistake? Did God err when he knit this child together? Exodus 4:11, the Lord said to him, who has made man's mouth, or who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Fair question. John 9:23, it's the story of the man born blind. The disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, it was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. Some of the most beautiful and precious people I know are people who were born with Down syndrome, other birth defects, and things like that, and they are beautifully made in the image of God. The second question is this, too. Would we think it right to put such a child to death after it's born? We must be careful with this as well, lest we slip into eugenics, right? Trying to improve the human race through controlled breeding and reproduction. And my friend made a great point this week. Well, if we're applying this to the unborn because they're inconvenient and they make life difficult for us, what do we do with old people whose health begins to slip? When do we start making the decision? When do we start saying and deciding that people aren't valuable enough to give them quality of life? Look, not every child is perfect, okay? Not every child is planned. Sometimes parents find themselves in a unique position of caring for a child with special needs. But that child is still in the image of God and still has purpose and still deserves to live. And sometimes severe health problems, I get it, they limit the lifespan of the child. They may live a few days, months, years outside the womb. Sometimes a few hours, we know. But God is sovereign over life and death, not us, not humans. And I think it's best to leave that decision up to the Lord. Truth is, I've yet to meet a parent of a genuinely special needs child who regrets their decision to have the child over a quality of life, either for them or the baby. One more note. This is interesting too. There are several documented cases where an expecting parent was warned their child would likely be born with a genetic defect, and so as they do, they offer an abortion. And these women made the choice of life and carried the term and delivered children who turned out to be 100% healthy. The doctors were wrong. Let's talk about this last loophole. This is the argument most often made, the health of the mother. Okay, in cases where a mother is actually medically in danger, such as an ectopic pregnancy, which is where the ovum is stuck in the mother's fallopian tube, okay, the procedure to save the mother's life would eliminate the fertilized egg. The argument that this is morally acceptable stems from the idea that it's the intention not to end the baby's life, but to save the mother, and that it's also a life-for-life situation and not abortion on demand. However, in that kind of pregnancy, the fertilized egg would never have survived. It doesn't have what it needs to live. And it's not a desirable situation either way. But amazingly, we talk about the health of the mother. Medicine is advancing so rapidly that infant and maternal mortality rates have plummeted over the years. And you know, my friend's twins were born preemies and spent like 2 months in the NICU. They're celebrated their birthday and they're healthy and happy, because medical science has come a long way. But when the question gets raised over this idea of the health of a mother, it turns out it's a very broad definition. So the same day that Roe v. Wade decision was handed down, the Supreme Court made another lesser known but equally important decision, case of Doe versus Bolton. You may not have heard of it, but here's what it's about. Doe versus Bolton stated that a woman may obtain an abortion after fetal viability. Okay, that's another word that could be a whole other discussion, viability, if necessary to protect her health. But the court then defined health as follows. Whether, quote, an abortion is necessary is a professional judgment that the physician will be called upon to make routinely. We agree, says the court, that the medical judgment may be exercised in light of all factors, physical, emotional, psychological, familial, and the woman's age, relevant to the well-being of the patients. All of these factors may relate to health. Now, you and I might say health, and we could talk about physical health, but no, it's very broad. It essentially allowed a woman to get an abortion for any reason and apply it to this definition. And this decision was issued as a, quote, companion to Roe v. Wade, making this broad health definition the standard for late-term abortions after the point of viability. Let's talk about this issue of health. A couple years ago, it was in the news that people were talking about defunding Planned Parenthood. And places like Planned Parenthood, which is the largest abortion provider in America, position themselves as what? Necessary to providing essential health care for women. That's their selling point. We're not about abortions, we're about health care. Now, people have argued that if Planned Parenthood went under, hundreds of thousands of people would lose access to necessary services. However, federally funded comprehensive care clinics outnumber Planned Parenthood 20 to 1. There are 20 times more federally funded comprehensive care clinics in the U.S. that serve low-income, medically underserved populations than there are Planned Parenthood locations. This map here really shows you all the little orange dots are Planned Parenthoods, all the white dots are comprehensive care clinics. And let's bring this a little closer to home. Almost 1,700 care clinics versus 114 Planned Parenthoods in California. This idea that women won't be able to get health care is false. Well, what does this mean? That many of the loopholes presented by the pro-choice movement are not incidental instances where abortion might be a reasonable option, but broad, sweeping generalizations that give a person who simply doesn't want or feel they can or should care for a child to choose to end their pregnancy. So in fact, here's the issue that's really comes to mind, the matter of intent. Well, what does that mean? Do you want the baby or not? Do you want the baby or not? That's a key issue. Because if an unborn child is wanted, its death is miscarriage, murder, or manslaughter. And if an unborn child is unwanted, then ending its life is a legal abortion. Said, what do you mean? Well, in 2002, Scott Peterson was accused of murdering his wife Lacey and their unborn child Connor. Under, ironically, California law, Peterson was charged with 2 felony counts of murder with premeditation and special circumstances. See, there's 2 counts because of California's fetal homicide statute that any fetus, meaning 8 weeks of development and onward, is considered an equal victim. State is so weird. In 2004, Peterson was found guilty of first-degree murder for Lacey's death and second-degree murder for the death of his unborn son, Connor. So there's legal precedent that the unborn are considered a human and protected. And we've already seen in Exodus 21 that there's a biblical precedent that harming an unborn child carries the same recompense as murdering an adult. And I want to address this too. Look, some women are pressured by men that don't want the responsibility of fatherhood and tell these women to go get an abortion. And in my opinion, I'll just say this is an act of fear, of cowardice, of just irresponsibility. And we should not think that women are the only ones that bear the responsibility, nor should we lay all the blame for abortion on their shoulders. Men are just as responsible for creating that child, should be just as responsible and culpable for its upbringing. In fact, people think that it's just men that are like, let's be pro-life. More women than men are pro-life. I think that's significant. And men need to get on board here. What's interesting is that in America, about 85% of women who have abortions are unmarried. But globally, 73% of women who have abortions are married. So this isn't solely a woman's issue. Men are deeply involved in this as well. And of course, we know this, and I'm going to say it out loud. Sex has consequences. Sex has responsibilities. And both need to be taken seriously. In their justification of abortion, the National Abortion Federation states this: the decision to have an abortion is rarely simple. Most women base their decision on several factors, the most common being lack of money and or unreadiness to start or expand their families due to existing responsibilities. Many feel that the most responsible course of action is to wait until their situation is more suited to child rearing. 66% plan to have children when they are older, financially able to provide necessities for them, and or in a supportive relationship with a partner so their children will have 2 parents. Others wanted to get pregnant but developed serious medical problems, learned that the fetus had severe abnormalities, or experienced some other personal crisis. And about 13,000 women each year have abortions because they have become pregnant as a result of rape or incest. So this is their justification with abortion. Now look, I feel for anybody in a crisis, unplanned pregnancy. But guess what? Kids are inconvenient. They will never fit into your existing plans, even when your plans include them. And if you're waiting until you can afford them, you never will. Okay? Same thing with, we're going to wait till we can afford to get married. You'll never get married then. Okay? Or waiting until things are more stable. Have you lived life? Okay? When I read the above these reasons for why people choose an abortion, I think this is what I think. It insults millions of parents who find a way, who make a life for their kids, even with little resources. It undermines the single moms who sacrifice so much for their kids and still manage to raise awesome children. It rejects the strength of women and parents who deal with special needs children and mothers who endure bed rest and other physical ailments for the good of their child. I think it demonstrates how fear and uncertainty can guide and control us. And I don't say this arbitrarily. As I've read the stories of women who have chosen to have abortions, so many of them were marked by fear. And look, not every kid is planned, and not every kid is even wanted, but no child deserves to be treated as a mistake or an inconvenience. Okay? So let's talk about this. What does it mean to be pro-life? All right? This is important for us. On the surface, we'd say it's protecting the unborn, making sure they don't become victims of abortion. But I'm going to tell you this, there has to be more to it. See, worldwide, the ability to care for a child is undermined by poverty and health crisis and lack of education. If we are pro-life, we need to desire more than just that a child should be given a chance to breathe. All right? And it's a criticism of the church and many conservatives that while we advocate for pro-life, we also want to limit social services for those families who need them. Now, much of that debate falls into the political arena. However, that is criticism that we need to consider. What is our approach to this? How are we dealing with the social crises in our world? Sister Joan, there's a Benedictine monk, her Chittister is a more liberal Benedictine monk, but she wrote this: I do not believe that just because you're opposed to abortion that makes you pro-life. In fact, I think in many cases your morality is deeply lacking if all you want is a child born, but not a child fed, not a child educated, not a child housed. And why would I think that you don't, she says, because you don't want any tax money to go there. That's not pro-life, that's pro-birth, and we need a broader conversation on what the morality of pro-life is. I think that's a valid statement. I think we need to realize that if we're going to say we want these children to live, we need to give them and help us provide the resources for that to happen. So I'm really happy with organizations like the pregnancy care centers that are out there, because they provide a lot of diapers, they provide a lot of post-birth care, they provide job training, some of them, they provide a lot of other resources. I think the criticism that the church isn't doing a lot is inaccurate, because the church statistically is doing more than anybody else, but it doesn't mean we're doing everything we can. James 1:21 says this: pure and genuine religion in the sight of God the Father means caring for orphans and widows in their distress and refusing to let the world corrupt you. So we cannot say that we care for children in the womb unless we're also willing to say we'll care for children out of the womb. That also means caring for mothers and fathers that have created this child. And I'm not necessarily saying that we don't, and I know we do more, but we can do a better job. I believe that. So what can the church do? What can we do as the people of God? There should be a capital C on there. What can the church, God's people, do in this issue of abortion and the sanctity of life? Well, number one, pray. Let's pray. Pray that those who are considering an abortion will choose to see their unborn child as a person created in the image of God. And pray that the spirit of fear that leads so many down this path will be replaced by a spirit of hope in the sufficiency and strength of God to carry us through difficult times. And not only that, we can support. We can support those with unplanned pregnancies. We can let them know they're not alone. We can support those with children struggling to make ends meet. We can support those that may not make it on their own, and we can let them know that they are not alone. I've had the opportunity in life to know people who have had a crisis pregnancy, and the fact is the reason some of them even consider abortion is because they think it's all on them, when the church can come alongside and pick them up. And the other thing we can do is we can support agencies that encourage women to keep their children and who demonstrate Christ's love. We have some just even here in El Cajon that are making a difference in women's lives. Another thing we can do is we can adopt. You're thinking, I can't adopt. But listen, I've mentioned this statistic before, but listen to this. According to the Abba Fund, an adoption assistance program for Christian families, if one family out of every 3 churches adopted a waiting child, we would empty the orphanages in America. And this was a criticism. I responded to somebody on Facebook this week saying, if you believe that kids deserve a chance to live, you should adopt those kids. Go out there and do it. And kindly said and reminded them that, that we are, that the Christians adopt at twice the rate of anybody else, and we are doing this. And I really believe that if we demonstrate that we're willing to care for those that no one else would care for, that it might encourage some people to carry their child to term, even if they give them up for adoption. But here's the challenge. It can cost $30,000 to adopt a kid. I know people who can't have children, that want to have children, and they literally can't afford it because they have to jump through all these social services hoops and all these legal hoops and all these hurdles to adopt a child. So pray for system reform so adoption become a viable option for families that wish to do so. That's the thing. So the answer is that, well, if you really love these kids, you'd adopt them. People are trying, and they can't. So we need to pray that those who are trying to adopt can make a way. And lastly, we need to forgive. Don't forget that while abortion is morally wrong and a sin, okay, even encouraging someone to have one is wrong, by the way, it still falls under God's offer of grace and forgiveness. We've been guilty of stigmatizing those who have gone through abortion. Some women regret it. Some don't. Some celebrate it. And that's unfortunate. And regardless, though, we need to be willing to reach out in love, demonstrating a better way found in the hope and the trust of Jesus Christ. Look, the sanctity of life matters. Because if we truly believe that unborn children are made in the image of God, they have a right to life both before and after the womb. And as Christians, we need to support those children and families as best we can before and after birth. And if we say we're pro-life, then we need to recognize that it means their whole life. Look, government policies come and go, right? Public opinion changes. And we may not actually see a repeal of Roe v. Wade, and that would be a tragedy. But the battle for the unborn isn't going to be won in court, but in changed hearts. Okay? It will take all of us stepping up, putting our money where our mouth is, and offering genuine compassion, real help, and God's love to see people's opinions and actions on abortions change. And if we can, through our efforts, see even one child saved, then that is a battle won. Amen? Father, thank you for this time of the Word. Hopefully it's an encouragement and a challenge.